In a quiet village called Akumazi, known for its bustling market and peaceful community, there lived a man named Kofi. He was a butcher in his late 40s who sold the most unusual meat along with his wife Ada. Mr. Kofi and Ada had moved to Akumazi only a few years ago, and since then, strange events have begun to unfold. Mr. Kofi's meat stall became famous overnight. The villagers gathered to him because his meat was fresh and tender, and always sold at an unbelievably low price. No one could understand how he managed to sell such large quantities of meat so cheaply. The other butchers in the market grew jealous and suspicious, whispering among themselves about Mr. Kofi's mysterious supply. Mr. Kofi was an odd man. Despite making a fortune from his sales, he wore ragged clothes and lived in a broken house on the edge of the village. He hardly ever spoke to anyone except his wife Ada, who was equally strange. Ada was often seen in the market, quietly watching Kofi sell his meat, her eyes dark and unreadable. One day, a fellow meat seller named Mary decided to find out what was going on. She had always been curious about Mr. Kofi and his mysterious ways. She knew he made a lot of money, so she was determined to uncover the secret behind his strange behavior and cheap meat. One evening, as the market was closing, Mary decided to follow Mr. Kofi and Ada to their home. She had noticed how Mr. Kofi never ate at the market, and how Ada always seemed to be hiding something under her shawl. With curiosity gnawing at her, Mary kept a safe distance, her heart pounding with every step. Kofi and Ada walked silently, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. They reached their home, and as Mr. Kofi unlocked the door, Ada glanced around nervously, almost as if sensing they were being watched. Mary ducked behind a tree, holding her breath. Once inside, Mr. Kofi and Ada began to talk in hushed voices. Mary crept closer to a window and peeked inside. She saw Mr. Kofi open a large black pot, and the stench that wafted out made her gag. Ada handed Kofi a knife, and he began to chop something with a sickening thud. Mary's eyes widened in horror when she realized what she saw in the pot. Just as she was about to look closer, she heard Mr. Kofi shout, "Who's there?" Mary stumbled back and ran away once more, not stopping until she reached her house, her mind racing with fear and disbelief. Breathing heavily, she locked her door and sat down to think. She knew she had to tell someone about what she had seen, but who would believe her? Mr. Kofi was well liked by everyone. She decided to confide in her best friend, Joyce. "My friend, I am in big trouble," Mary said to Joyce the next day. "Do you remember the meat seller, Mr. Kofi? I followed him to his house yesterday, and you won't believe what I saw." Joyce listened intently as Mary narrated everything she had seen. She was shocked but agreed that they needed to find out more before going to the authorities. The next day, Mary and Joyce came up with a plan. They would keep a close eye on Kofi and Ada, taking turns to follow them. They needed more evidence before going to the authorities, but they were determined to uncover the truth. Over the next few days, they noticed Kofi and Ada always left their house late at night, carrying heavy sacks into the woods. Mary and Joyce followed them discreetly, staying hidden in the shadows. One night, they saw Kofi and Ada digging in the forest, burying something in a shallow grave. When the couple left, Mary and Joyce approached the spot, their hearts pounding. They dug up the fresh earth and uncovered a horrible sight, a decomposed covered in blood. The horror of what Mr. Kofi and Ada had been doing hit them like a wave. They knew they couldn't wait any longer. The next morning, Mary and Joyce went to the village chief and told him everything. The chief was doubtful at first, but the terror in their eyes convinced him to take action. He gathered a group of villagers and they marched to Kofi and Ada's house, demanding answers. Kofi and Ada tried to flee, but the villagers surrounded them. With no escape, they confessed to their wicked crimes. Kofi had been butchering travelers who passed through the village, and Ada had been helping him dispose of the bodies. They had been selling human flesh to the unsuspecting villagers, using the profits to send money back to their home village. The villagers were horrified. They could hardly believe that such evil had been living among them. Kofi and Ada were handed over to the authorities, and the village of Akumazi was left to struggle with the consequences of their horrible deeds. For weeks, the market was silent. No one dared to buy or sell meat. The villagers mourned for the victims, many of whom would never be identified. Joyce and Mary were hailed as heroes for their bravery, but the shadow of Kofi and Ada's crimes would haunt the village for years to come. The story of the butcher and his wife spread far and wide, a chilling reminder that evil can wear many faces, even that of a friendly butcher and his quiet wife. And so, the village of Ada learned to always be vigilant, to look beyond appearances, and to never forget the horror that once lurked in their midst.